What is going on, everybody? It is another episode of the 5280 podcast, and yours truly is back. Yes, I am back. But unfortunately, we're working through some technical difficulties with Glenn, and we're hoping we can be able to get him back shortly. But of course, we have the youngling of the group. We have Gage, as always, over here with us. As you can also tell, Mike is not here with us. We decided to actually put him in timeout. He had some pretty not so good things to say about Travis Hunter over the weekend on the timeline, and we wanted to make sure that we put him in timeout, saying some disrespectful things about, how he's not even the best wide receiver on the team, and, just some other things. We decided to kind of put him in timeout. And so that he can just, make sure that he understands that what he said and what he, broke down was absolutely wrong. How are you doing, Gage? You doing well? You survived the shootout that was Monday Night Football?
Man, that was easily the craziest football game that I have ever experienced in person. We got the full Jameis Winston experience in that game. He throws for 500 yards, throws for 4 touchdowns, 2 pick sixes, and another interception in basically garbage time to boot. It was literally just Jameis Winston's 30 for 30 season, like you said in the pregame or when we were just talking before the show. Like you said, it was just that in a nutshell, basically. That game was insane. The Broncos, they had some leaks defensively. They definitely did not play their best game on the defensive side of the ball. But like I said last night, good teams find a way to make big plays in big moments. And that's exactly what the Broncos did. They made several big plays that ultimately led to victory in that game.
And obviously there was a bit of a reunion of sorts, should we say, and it was a resounding reunion. But the most important factor of it all is he heads back to the city of Cleveland with a big fat L down over there. But nonetheless, it was a big game, and I think the first thing that I would say right off the bat is probably one of my biggest takeaways, and obviously over the course of this season of them getting closer, meaning the Broncos getting closer for them. Establishing and clinching a playoff berth is every once in a while they have had games, right? They have had games where you look at yourself and you're mumbling under your breath and everything and saying, I don't know if they've ever had a chance to win a game like that. And this game was certainly one in those cards of I don't know whether or not they actually win a game like that in 8 years.
Teams find a way to make big plays.
Do we?
Hey guys.
And that's exactly.
I think I'm having some issues still.
They made several.
Can
you guys hear us?
I can't hear a word you're saying.
Oh man,
that may be a blessing. Who knows? Anyway, I'm going to keep working on this, and this is like the best show to be on too. It's crazy. I'll see you in a few.
Yep. We're like we said, we're working through some technical difficulties with Glenn. We'll get him in, but I mean, but it's still as we were saying, Gage, like over the course of this game, I can't even tell you how many games that the Broncos have won where you're like, I don't know if they win this game. And specifically that game last night, and what was, if you're being blunt, one of the first times in maybe the last 8 years where it felt like there was a shootout in the Mile High City. Where teams are going up and down and obviously not just in Mile High, but in other stadiums and everything. But to have a shootout and then have an offense that that you trust to go and score that many points, like that was a crazy, crazy game.
It really was. And offensively, they did have some issues for sure, but they were ultimately able to make the plays when it mattered most. Bo Nix, third down, the money down, he was sensational. I mean, his best play was very clearly the third down and 11, 93-yard touchdown to Marvin Mims. He throws that thing on a frozen rope down the middle of the field, zips it between multiple defenders. I mean, literally could put it in a more perfect spot. And Marvin Mims had an excellent catch and run after the catch to boot. It was just beautiful, but it wasn't just that. I mean, Bo Nix was hooking up with Cortland Sutton all night long on third down. I loved how early on Cortland Sutton has that second down drop. Bo Nix is not afraid to come right back to him there, and they convert on third down. Just goes to show how much Bo Nix trusts Cortland Sutton. And Devon Vele, he had a really nice catch. It was an overall quiet day from him, but he also drew a key pass interference. So, yeah, man, offensively, they found a way to make the plays when it mattered most, especially on third down.
You know, and I think that when you look at these kinds of games and you look at them, you know, and over the course of the year, because obviously, you know, you're going to have your fair share of critiques. And I think we've been seeing that in the last, you know, week or so, you know, given everything we've been hearing, if you will, about this quarterback position. By the way, to everybody that is in the chat, thank you so much for chiming in. We'll get to some of them. Looks like Brian says, Jeff Bryan says sometimes it's VJ scheme that are awful. And I pull up Mundungus's you know, comment, but he's in timeout as it were. Sports Nonsense and Whiskey was talking about the experience of the game. You know, it was awesome, and I'm sure you were there, Gage. It was awesome to see that energy and excitement from the fans. You know, and looks like Dave mentioned Sean would not have had Russ throw that pass, and you know, it goes to show you how Sean has that confidence in Bo, and I think that's just like one of those things. Like, and it's not a dig on Russ by any means. I think it just goes to show you the confidence level, though, that he meaning Sean has in, you know, in his young quarterback. And I think that what I was getting ready to say was what's one of the most impressive parts about this Denver Broncos run lately is they're doing this without a running game. And I know that, you know, there's a lot of people out there you know, that have been chiming in saying, you know, about maybe how good this Denver Broncos running game is. You know, I think due to the efforts of Mr. Jaleel McLaughlin last night, I can probably safely say the running game maybe wasn't as good as, you know, it certainly it needed to be. But I think Jaleel really did help carry that. But I just think what I'm trying to say is, like, it makes it that much more impressive what the passing offense is doing with their weapons and the scheming and everything. It's just, it is really impressive. And frankly, if you're being blunt, you know, Gage, a lot of that has to do with what Bo Nix has been doing, which is, you know, all these weapons around him.
Yeah. He's been able to distribute the football over these last couple of weeks. He's been able to get everybody involved, and he's been able to basically make Josh Reynolds expendable. The Broncos waived Josh Reynolds today because of the emergence of Devon Vele in that role, basically. Then Marvin Mims, they've been able to find different creative ways to use him on offense in sort of a scat back role and kind of a gadget guy. Troy Franklin, they've been trying to get him the rock, and they've actually been able to get some nice plays out of Troy Franklin. It's just that they can't quite connect on that deep ball. We're going to see it soon. We are going to see a Bo Nix bomb to Troy Franklin, and they are going to connect on it. But they're going to get him the rock because they know what he can do.
Yeah.
They're going with this sort of youth movement at the receiver position, and it's because Bo Nix has been able to really elevate some of these younger guys around him, especially a guy like Devon Vele. I've got to give Vele some love because he has been so awesome these last few weeks. Even though he only had one catch in this game, drew a pass interference as well, he blocks his tail off.
Yeah.
That's something that has really been apparent in this offense, and you'll notice that we've seen less and less snaps over these last couple of weeks from little Jordan Humphrey, and that is because Vele has been playing so well.
You know, and we'll definitely be talking about you Mr. Little Jordan Humphrey, because I know that I've been kind of like working with this theory, right? And I think I mentioned it a few times before about, him possibly switching positions maybe and using him, in tight ends. We'll talk about that. But, one thing that continues to be said and, week after week is we talk about the money down. He's not wide receiver one, obviously, in terms of like a true wide receiver one, with this team. But man, he certainly is a wide receiver one in Denver, and that is Courtland Sutton. And Gage, we are finally not saying he is wide receiver one, but we are finally getting the chance to see what a good quarterback can do with a guy like Courtland Sutton and really lifting that room. And he has become that money down, as much as Bo Nix is the money down player on third down, Courtland is being that money player on third down. And I think that Vele is to a certain, regard as well, in there as well. But Sutton has been super consistent. He is, and I think that, for me, Gage, that I think is so impressive is when you actually look through some of the progressions that Bo goes through, it actually isn't Courtland as his first read, really. Sometimes he's kind of going through his progressions, and then he'll find Courtland, which I think is truly one of the most impressive traits. So it's not like he's always looking for Courtland. He just knows in the hip pocket already where Sutton is going to be, and he finds him.
Yeah. And last year, Courtland Sutton was being utilized in a predominantly red zone role, and then he was being utilized in a role where Russell Wilson would kind of roll out and just yuck one up to him and hope he'd come down with it. This year, Sutton is being utilized way more over the middle of the field, dig routes, slant routes, quick in breakers, sit routes. He's really kind of spread his route tree out this year because he's got a quarterback who's actually able to consistently deliver those throws. So we're seeing Courtland Sutton operate in a completely different way than we saw him last year, and he's having so much success with it. And again, that just goes to show how much chemistry he already has with Bo Nix. I heard Troy Aikman talking about on the broadcast how imagine if the Broncos had decided to move on from Courtland Sutton this offseason. Bo Nix's rookie season might look completely different. And I got to be honest, we've been critical about Courtland Sutton here on this channel. We have been talking about how Courtland Sutton might have been on his way out the door this past offseason, but he's put all that talk to bed. And now the conversation has shifted to, should the Broncos extend Sutton? And if so, how long will the extension be and how much money are we talking about?
Right. And I think maybe that's going to certainly be a conversation, right here in this bye week, right? Is like, what do you see here? Possibly, do the Broncos do some more, extensions and moves and stuff like that with, a couple players. And I think we all know who those couple players are in mind. What's up, Dreamweaver? Thanks for hopping in. Broncos are back. Yes. Clayton chimes in. Crazy fun game to watch. He said, man, 8-5. Let's go. Saying all year, Bo Nix, baby. No fly zone. I don't know if I would go that far in particular with this game, but certainly, it certainly seems like that secondary kind of made up for a little bit, facing against, of course, Jameis Winston. Let's probably get into that side of things here just a little bit, because for as much as we are hopeful and about like how big of a game that this is, and we'll obviously talk more about that too, but this game could also have been a loss. And if you're looking squarely in the face of someone, it would have been Vance Joseph and his lack of adjustments. I was really surprised, that to say that this game would have been, lost because of them not making adjustments. Yeah, I think that would have been true. The fact that it took them, albeit, till the 4th minute of the 4th quarter, roughly, I'm being quite generous there, for them to even make the switch to Chris Abrams' drain. And that's just the small part of it, not even actually considering the matchup all of us wanted. And, and that is, putting, Pat Surtain on Jerry Jeudy. That never happened really. And obviously we know, once it did, he was that defensive player of the year candidate. So it's just like, I don't know. I don't know what to make of it, Gage. But it was very confusing, and it was kind of malpractice to a degree.
When Jeudy was on Surtain last night, he had 2 catches for, I think, 20 yards, and both of them came on stop routes. That's one thing Jeudy does very well, is he stops on a dime. So I'm not going to give Surtain any grief for giving up those 2 completions. But when he was on Levi Wallace last night, Jerry Jeudy was just absolutely tearing up shop. Plus, the Broncos played a lot more zone coverage in this game than I would have wanted to see, and Jeudy was exploiting that. He was getting open in these voids in the zone, and it just was not good. But we've got to obviously address the elephant in the room here, and that's Levi Wallace. He was fucking terrible in that game. I don't mean to be that brutal, but he really was. He had poor leverage against Jerry Jeudy pretty much all game long. He even gave up a couple of big completions to Elijah Moore. It was horrible. I mean, several times he got his hips turned. It would have been even worse had Jameis Winston not overthrown Jerry Jeudy on a deep post against quarters coverage, where Wallace was once again 7 yards behind him. And that was one where they failed to hit. Later on in the game, they did hit on it. Same play, just a deep post route. Mm-hmm. Levi Wallace, again, 7, 8 yards.
Literally after the Marvin Mims play, actually.
Yeah, literally the same play after the Marvin Mims play. Back-to-back big touchdowns. And it was just a horrible game. And honestly, the Broncos haven't made any knee-jerk cuts this year. But if there is one cut they could make to kind of send a message to this team that nobody's safe at any given time, they could make the move to cut Levi Wallace. He was that bad in that game. But like you said, Cam, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
But like you said, this is also very heavily on Vance Joseph for not making adjustments. Why wasn't Surtain traveling with Jeudy? I understand Surtain doesn't travel to the slot a lot, but he does do it. They do put him in the slot, and they did do it towards the end of the game. Why weren't we seeing that all game long? Jerry Jeudy was literally just killing every DB for the Broncos not named Pat Surtain. Even Jaquan McMillan, Jerry Jeudy had a completion on him. So it's just a lack of adjustments from Vance Joseph until late in the game. But as I said, it's better late than never. They did put Chris Abrams' drain in there. He did have a pass interference. He did give up a completion, but he also had a couple of nice reps that make you go, all right, if Riley Moss can't play against Indianapolis, we need to see Chris Abrams' drain as opposed to Levi Wallace.
And I do think to David Youngkin's point, I do think the loss of Riley Moss was big. I do think that they clearly missed him, but I think that it remains, or it should be said, right? It should be said again that it's gonna sound bad because, it almost makes it seem like we're hating on Riley when I say this, but it's the fact he was beating so many corners tonight or on Monday, not named Surtain, makes you wonder. And given the fact Moss also had been dealing with his injury, I don't know if it would have been much of a factor. Going up against Jeudy, and specifically knowing the fact that Moss was a bit limited. But it's just but yeah, it's one of those things that I think that it's all factors, where if you're looking from Vance Joseph's side of things, like, why can't you make that adjustment? I bring it up every once in a while, but like whenever I see coaches fail to make adjustments, I always am reminded of it just shows you, I think for me, like how I'm reminded of like that game that John Fox and the Broncos had against the Indianapolis Colts, where they failed to put Chris Harris Jr. on T.Y. Hilton. Like that game will always like be ingrained in my head. And so whenever I see stuff like this happen where, Pat Surtain wasn't following Jerry Jeudy for the majority of the game, like it is just so baffling. Cause like to your point in talking about like, he may not be following in the slot as much. He was on Brock Bowers the week before. Like, I mean, like, so what in essence is stopping you, as an adjustment, to to putting, PS2 on Jeudy. Like it was literally what everybody had been clamoring for. Obviously, Levi Wallace, I don't know if he's going to be cut strictly from one game, but he's also it's a very small contract. It was just a 1-year contract. He's also a bit older, I think, or close to 30 years old. So they could move on from him and promote some of this youth movement, which clearly you are starting to see on the offensive side of the ball. I'd venture the guess that you could, see some of that maybe on the defensive side of the ball. But speaking of that youth movement, not on the offense, Gage, we are seeing some youth movement happen where an alpha on that defensive line seems to be emerging, and his name is not Zach Allen.
No, hold on a minute. You're breaking up a little bit.
Oh, I was just saying that when you look strictly at that defensive line, that, and just the defense in general, that you're looking at an alpha emerging, and his name isn't Zach Allen.
Who would you be referring to?
A little Casa Bonito.
Oh, yes. You had me thinking interior, but yes, obviously Nick Bonito has just been sensational. He has emerged as a true defensive player of the year candidate. He's second in the NFL in sacks. He's got like 19 TFLs or something like that, multiple quarterback hits. He's been incredible. And, oh, yeah, he did have a 71-yard pick six last night where he read that play like a book. He was driving on it just as Jameis Winston was starting his throwing motion. It was an incredible play by Bonito in coverage. Clearly, he had been studying film on that play. And, dude, just awesome stuff. And being able to take it 71 yards to the house, like, holy crap. Yeah. Nick Bonito gets another sack in that game as well. Just, I think at this point, you have to put him in the conversation for Defensive Player of the Year.
It is, and we say it every once in a while, just so you know, and sometimes there are players where it just, it kind of takes your breath away sometimes, like how they, just really just shoot up and have that kind of growth, even for a third-year player. But to see what Bonito has been doing and with, Kane, right? Jamar Kane, who deserves a lot of credit here. It is really impressive. And, the pick six specifically is one where, if we're going to make any defensive player of the year case, that is one where I think you are blown away by that particular play from Nick Bonito. Not so much the actual pick itself. Kudo to Frankie Film, Frankie Abbott, who posted this. But if you look strictly at the all 22 of the view that happened, he was like taking multiple routes away. Like he was taking multiple routes away on that defensive play. And so to do what he did, basically just jump the route as a like 6'5", 200 and almost like 60-pound, edge rusher, and doing what he did, and moving as fast as he did, it goes to show you the explosive player and athlete that Benito is.
Hi, Glenn.
What's up, guys? What did I miss?
Nothing. But it's much like the Broncos secondary against the Browns. And experiencing technical difficulties of your own. You were experiencing technical difficulties. So
Right, just like Levi Wallace, I was about 25 steps behind. So
yeah.
Yeah. Sure, he's taking a beating tonight.
Yeah, just a little bit.
Yeah, we were actually just discussing him.
Yeah. So you could piggyback off of a lot of what we talked about in the first 20 plus minutes, but we were just talking about the defense and the secondary wise, Vance Joseph, and just as you entered is when we were just talking about the performance that was Nick Benito and him emerging as a defensive player of the year candidate.
I mean, just in the last 24 hours, he was on with Scott Van Pelt afterwards. He was on McAfee today. Kay Adams was talking about him, suggesting that she hadn't even mentioned his name all year and that needs to change. So it's pretty exciting. He's finally, getting his flowers. I know a lot of people love that expression around here, but, so it's, so that's pretty cool. Guy's a speedster. He was joking around saying, I've been telling people I was a defensive back and no one believed me, but I think I showed that on that return. I mean, I'm real happy for the guy. I mean, we're now he's under serious consideration for defensive player of the year, which is absolutely bananas considering, so.
Yeah. It was just so interesting when you look at the game in general and from the offensive side of things, Glenn, you didn't get a chance to chime much about the offense, but what were you most impressed with? When you look at this Denver Broncos offense, one of the things that we talked about, at the very top was, over the course of this year, there have just been games where in the past, in the last 8 years, they don't win many of these games. They don't win many of these games. This was like their first shootout. I think the way that I said it was like it was the first shootout that I can recall since like the Dallas and Peyton game,
right,
where it was just like up and down, and like take the opponent's record out of it, but like where you're just like on the edge of your seat in a chaotic game. But like, what was one of the most impressive parts for you when you got a chance to see, watch that game yesterday?
So, like you were just saying, it's in recent years, when things are going well in a game, you almost are waiting for the other shoe to drop. If things tighten up, you're just there's an expectation that it's just not going to end up going our way, and that mindset really has changed. Even though I'll be honest, I was a little tight at the end of last night, but the thing that really stood out for me is Bo Nix's ability to throw these absolute bullets, these rocket shots. And I'm not just talking about the deep ball, but in particular, these fastballs that have seemingly come out of nowhere in the last like 3 weeks or essentially in that time frame. And you can see his confidence and he's almost challenging himself to try to thread the needle in certain areas, and it's working out. And, I think that was the thing that was most exciting for me. I mean, he had 2 opportunities when he was in the end zone to roll out and just dump it to a running back. I think it was Esteban on both occasions. And he chose not to do that. One he went, cross the field and ill-advised pass, but the other one he threw down to Franklin and for a large gain. And you can just, we have a rookie quarterback. We're in salary cap hell, and we're in line for a playoff spot because this guy has just stepped up. It's freaking awesome.
And there was a brief moment. It looks like what is it? Lazy Hazy chimes in where he hasn't used his legs much. Like there was a brief moment in the game where he was able to use his legs, but Gage, like we were talking about Knicks, but obviously like they're into what Glenn was talking about, like if there was a game, and obviously we were at the Atlanta Falcons game, it feels a bit different lately, when you're at the game and also watching this. knowing what we had, you and I, and watching that Atlanta game and then watching this Cleveland game, it's just something's different about, Nick's, with that arm that Glenn was talking about, because it's like things are jumping off of his arm. And I love the analogy that Coleman made 12 hours ago or 24 hours ago, like it's a trebuchet with his arm. Like he's got such a much better arm than I think that a lot of us had anticipated. And so like that particular Cleveland game, and obviously maybe that Falcons game, but like he is shutting up so many narratives on the season with his arm, his legs, his ability to really carry a team and really lift all boats. Frankly, and I to be blunt, he is not just a offensive rookie of the year candidate. Like he is legitimately an MVP type of candidate with the way that he's really lifted this offense up.
Certainly team MVP for sure. Like the dude has been absolutely sensational. I know I keep saying that, but that's just the word that immediately comes to mind when you think of how he has played, because like you said, he is elevating the talent around him. And Bo Nix is definitely a guy who was very polarizing coming out of college. I know I really liked him. Cam was also high on him, and Cam was the guy who initially put me on to Bo Nix when we were doing our pre-draft evaluations. And he has exceeded expectations of even people who were high on Bo Nix coming out of the draft. Like, the arm talent has just really jumped out. Like his ability to throw these frozen ropes 45 yards down the field, like on that Marvin Mims touchdown. His ability to consistently hit these outbreaking routes 25 yards down the field, these deep digs 30 yards down the field. His footwork has gotten better over these last couple of weeks, but even off platform, he has been throwing some piss missiles, man. Like you and I were talking, we were having a little conversation in our group chat about maybe a comparison for Bo Nix, because Brock Purdy was an early comparison that Cam and I had. There's obviously the Drew Brees comparison that always gets thrown around, but Cam was bold enough to say in our text thread, Josh Allen as of late. I wasn't quite willing to go that far. I said Joe Burrow with legs, but still, that's a big time compliment.
Well, and again, it's got nothing to do with the fact of being Josh Allen. It's just like when you see the last couple of games, it's just like it is wild, because he's like he's been a playmaker with his legs. Now, given the full sample size, now what he's doing with his arm, because like he's obviously clearly got the ball handling that he's been doing in the pocket. His pocket awareness has been special. The way he's moving around and outside the pocket is pretty Josh Allen-esque. So you're starting to kind of see this to where now he's also big game hunting now, like Josh Allen. Like it's wild for me. So I'm not saying he's Josh Allen right now, like by any means, but it's just like what he's showing is just he's outperforming the Drew Brees comparison. But I don't think the Drew Brees comparison is by far wrong at all, though.
No, but on that Mims play, which is going to live in Broncos history, I think forever. 3rd and 11, 7-yard line. That is a play that generally would scream, let's hand it to a running back, try to get 5 yards and give our punter a little bit of distance. The trust that Sean Payton has in Bo Nix, where this was not a lob pass that Marvin Mims ran under. This was, again, like Gage described, frozen rope, piss missile, whatever you want to say. I mean, threaded the needle. There's the photo that we're now seeing as of this afternoon, where it's the close-up of Mims catching it, and you're seeing all of what was in between the ball and him. That is what is making us all excited. We've all fallen for these players in the past, just mainly based on hope in the last 8 years that we really needed to glom onto something, positive. But there's something very different about this situation. And this guy really is the real deal. And the fact that every week they're introducing more things to him. Like Flying Dragon Films mentioned, he learns from his mistakes. That is a
Right.
huge thing. He's, you're talking about him coming out of college. Some of these guys played 12 games in college. He started 61 games for Auburn. Oregon. That is invaluable to have that. And we're seeing that experience on display right now. And I'm just excited, where are these next few games going to go? Where's the end of the season going to go? What are they going to, what's going to happen after this bye?
Yeah.
The sky seems the limit, not necessarily for this year, but I'm talking about for years to come. And that's what's so exciting for Broncos country right now.
And I gotta say, and this is a great comment that David mentioned, and obviously this is a huge slap of the face to the Bo Nix narrative. But the check down merchant that was Bo Nix would not have won the game last night. Like the checkdowns would not have won the game last night. Like, the ability to so to the few times that Troy Aikman, for as much as you're a great quarterback, would like point out every once in a while that like, hey, there's a certain check down right over here, and he wouldn't hit it. That never would have solved world hunger in that game. Like it was like that game was off the rails. And, I think over the course of 8 years, there were probably going to be numerous situations where I think they probably would have hit the check down, and that was not the case, and so I think that, Gage, I think one of the other parts that I think is just so impressive about Bo in terms of lifting everything is he's making the smart play. And I like how when Flying Dragon Main, he films made that, he, in terms of he learns from his mistakes, he's also making the right play. Because like, in third down, that money down, when we talk about it, it's like, just get the first down. You don't necessarily have to take the deep shot every once in a while. He obviously did that in the Cleveland Browns game, but like he's making the smart read. Like he's making the smart play after play, using his legs, but also like making sure that like it's a firm throw, a firm, accurate throw, like the play to Lucas Kroll. Like I that's like one of the most underrated throws of the entire game, how accurate he was able to fit that in there. Or, to what we were talking about earlier and what you mentioned, Glenn, is, and the trust that they've been having Sean with Bo and, getting Bo comfortable and throwing out of the end zone. The other drive that happened where they rolled Bo out, nearly gets sacked, throws the ball down on the ground, just the play before Marvin Mims. But then, he rolls out and finds Cortland Sutton on a beautiful, almost Jake Plummer, Josh Allen, if you will, esque play. It's just like Gage, he's making the right decisions like every single.
And I think the most underrated aspect of Bo Nix's game that we need to continue to hammer down over and over again, and this is the biggest reason why the Broncos made the transition from Russell Wilson to Bo Nix. He doesn't take sacks. He doesn't make a dead play into an even more dead play. Like, if the play's not there, Bo Nix will throw it away. He will get rid of the ball. He's not going to try to spin around and make something happen and spin his way into a sack because he dropped his eyes. And I don't want to keep crapping on Russell Wilson because he's playing some great football in Pittsburgh right now. He really is. But he just wasn't a good fit in this offense. Bo Nix is a perfect fit in this offense. He doesn't compound negative plays with more negative play.
Gage, even the game started exactly as you just described.
Yeah.
His first play was a pass thrown right into the ground. Like there was, and one of the most underrated plays of the game, and it's going to sound silly considering all the different aspects and the craziness that we saw last night.
Yeah.
Was, I believe it was like 2nd and 16, and he is running straight up, and he chose to slide, and he slid a few yards back where he probably could have gone further. And Aikman on the broadcast was criticizing him and saying this guy needs to be aware of his surroundings, and that's where you try to be hungry and get it. And I thought that was the smartest thing that he could have possibly done.
Yeah.
And we ended up converting that third down, and our quarterback is healthy. So it just, these are the decisions that we're seeing. He was not doing many slides at the beginning of the year when he was really running around. There's a comfort level there. And, when Sean Payton, I don't think I've ever seen him. I've watched a lot of games over the years where he's coached. I don't think I've ever seen him as joyous as he is after, in the past than he is after these Broncos victories. Like, he's literally giddy walking across the field, just grinning like a kid. And when he signed his contract with the Broncos, I really thought that was just he was gonna run the length of the contract and then ride off into the sunset. And I know it's only 2 years, we're second year in,
Right.
but I think this guy is going to really want to ride out this relationship and see where it heads if it continues to progress in the fashion that we're hoping that it does.
And that's the best case scenario, right? Like that's always the best case scenario, is you want it to, to basically run its course and, have the Broncos be the final and last team that, Sean Payton ever coaches. And he's off retiring and he's living in Cherry Hills and, and everything like that. So, and we would be remiss. We just talked about how we would be remiss if we didn't get a chance to talk about, how, Bo Nix is so good at avoiding sacks. Well, this offensive line, for as much as, there was the conversation of, Russell Wilson has run into sacks. Well, the offensive line under Russell Wilson was actually pretty good. Well, now you're putting it together where it's a really good offensive line, arguably top 5 analytically, or any stat really, a top 5 offensive line, paired with Bo Nix. Like, you're talking about a really good marriage. And for the majority, I mean, except for maybe one, big spot right now, and that would be left tackle, they're locked up for the, for the long haul. So, for as much as we were kind of dogging Cortland Sutton at the beginning of the year, and then obviously I kind of like realized that there was some marriage molding and things are really starting to kind of percolate between Sutton and Bo. And it's like, man, I kind of want to see where this thing goes. And obviously that, marriage got fixed. But Bulls, man, we might be it might be time to have another conversation about another guy who talk about the redemption arc. I mean, he has been fantastic. Obviously, there will be penalties, and here and there that are they are killers. The key holding.
Gotta learn to live with it, though.
But not allowing a single sack the entire offensive line, all game, and it's not the first time that this has happened. All season. Like, they have done a tremendous job all season long, Glenn, of really protecting that quarterback. And it might be time for them to really have that long conversation, if not already, where they need to extend Bulls.
Yeah, he's such a polarizing player, but I depending on what he's looking for money, I think maybe 2 or 3 years. I mean, he came into the league as an older player to begin with. One of the offensive players I did want to reference and shout out, Ben Powers had a great game last night.
Yeah.
And in one particular play, it was that really stood out for me. I mean, he was taking good care of Jaleel last night, but when Jaleel ran to the left and then double backed and the Browns are coming towards Powers, he just went like, he had his arms outstretched, but he didn't touch him. He just got in the way. And it was such a smart play because he wasn't going to run the risk of a holding penalty, anything happening on that play, which should have even been a 15-yard penalty because Jaleel got his face pulled all the way backwards. But that's the type of play that, like, we're now seeing from, this team is really gelling. It's I mean, I know I'm just sounding like super excited about this, but this feels real. It feels real. And I think that's why so many of us are, the positivity is coming out. And, maybe we're jumping the gun, but I don't know. It feels pretty real.
Well, I mean,
it does.
I would too, Glenn, knowing the fact that it seems like you're record prediction might be coming true.
That would be incredible if they went out at 12-5.
The one time
I mean,
where we're critiquing, about how he's this huge optimist, and then
Yeah. And that was with us winning the first 2 games, and we saw how that was panned out.
Yeah, you were gonna say something, Gage.
well, just pivoting back to the offensive line real quick, man. They really did have a great game, and I wanted to give them some love because all 5 of them were awesome in that game.
Mm-hmm.
Garrett Bowles, he's going to have plays, at least 1 or 2 of them every single game, that make you want to rip your hair out. It's going to be a holding penalty. It's going to be something of that variety, but the dude does not give up many pressures. He's been in the 0 pressure column for multiple games this year. That is huge. And this week, he did have a play where he gave up a pressure from Myles Garrett. 1 pressure given up against Myles Garrett, I can live with that. That was the play where Bo Nix kind of had to hurry the throw a little bit. It got tipped up in the air by Denzel Ward and intercepted by Greg Newsome. But the entire offensive line really did play well, especially in the run game, man. They were mauling cats up front. They were clearing these big holes for Jaleel McLaughlin, Ben Powers, like you guys said, Luke Wattenberg. He was giving Shelby Harris the business up front. Yeah. He really was. And then Mike McGlinchey, he had a couple of pancake blocks. He was his usual stout self. And then Quinn Miners just doing usual Quinn Miners things, taking guys for 20-yard magic carpet rides down the field and then slamming them to the ground afterwards. That's just a typical Quinn Miners day at the office. But the entire offensive line really did play great.
Yeah, and Flying Dragon Films, I don't know, where he ranks, but he is certainly one that deserves a lot of credit and praise, and that would be Zach Streif for the work that he's been doing, with that offensive line. And, because I think about, like, just if you look from the offensive line perspective, it's like, I remember when Garrett Bowles, and obviously this was Reisner too, but like really had their best year, and it was with Mike Munchak, a really capable offensive line coach. But how quick the turnaround was the moment Peyton came into the building with Zach Streif, and the offensive line just got cooking. So it really matters when you can be able to hit on, in a system like that. David Younklin asked, and it's actually a really good question, like, when was the last time we can firmly say that the Broncos have had a top 5 offense or even a top 5 defense? And I'm thinking to myself, like, was it possibly the was it that 2012 team, maybe the 2013 team, the one team that did not go to the Super Bowl?
Yeah, I'm thinking the 2012 team. Like, everybody who was a member of that team, like, of that whole stretch, will say that the 2012 team was the best team that they had overall. But that's the last time I can think of.
So I wanted to ask you guys, so when Jaleel was doing the rushing, had that incredible drive where he was just slicing and dicing. He was getting pumped up. The offensive line looked great. They're showing a stat on TV, and it's now hit 30 games, but we haven't had a 100-yard rusher now in nearly 2 full seasons, which is just a ridiculous statistic. And based on the success, so just the Cowboys had been up there as well, and they just had their first rusher breaking the 100 mark just the other day. But were you surprised, and what was your opinion on the next drive when they ended up doing the arm punt instead of, it seemed like it would have been a golden opportunity to pound and ground a little bit, or ground and pound a little bit with Jaleel, and not only work the clock, but also get him over that century mark. What do you think?
Yeah, I will say I was a little bit surprised, Bill, because for one, I was told that the Broncos had a really good running game. But I think that, when you look at from the running game, Jaleel was a hot hand. Jaleel was a hot hand. So I kind of figured, because like I will say there was a moment, the moment he was really rolling and he was really moving along and getting those yardage.
Mm-hmm.
I really thought that we were going to get that 100-yard game. I thought Jaleel was going to get his first 100-yard game, and it never materialized.
I thought so too.
It never materialized. And so I thought it was a bit, questionable at times. And I think if you're going to kind of nitpick a little bit here and there were probably some moments where I think that maybe Peyton, in terms of some calls that he probably would want to have back.
Yeah, and he said in his post-game presser that call in particular he wanted back. And looking at the film, it was kind of a fucked up play call from the jump. Honestly, it was. Like, it was a 8-man protection where the Browns were rushing, I believe, 7 guys. They had only 2 guys downfield running routes, Marvin Mims and Cortland Sutton. Sutton's double teamed, so Bo's like, all right, I've only got really one option here. I've got Mims one-on-one. I'm going to try it because that's really all I can do here. If I throw it away, I'm definitely getting an intentional grounding penalty because I'm not outside the pocket and there's nobody within 20 yards of me. So this is just a busted play. I'm going to try to make something happen here. And he chucks it downfield and it gets intercepted by Denzel Ward. Sean Payton said he wanted that call back, and it really was a screwed up play call.
Yeah, it was nice of him to have Bo's back on that. He said, that's not on Bo. That's me. That was me.
Yeah,
that was.
Yeah,
for sure.
Did
you feel that way? Like, in terms of like that they probably should have stuck with it, asking that question?
Oh, yes. I thought at least the next drive, it was a good opportunity to see where we had, what was left in the tank for Jaleel last night on that drive, and also work the clock down a little bit. It's one of the weirdest games I've ever seen in my life. I mean, you have a team that the defense has been incredible, has been touted, from all parts of the country about how great they are. Had been giving up 296 yards a game, and all of a sudden give up 550 yards a game, a 500-yard passer, and the defense becomes the hero. I mean, it was just incredible, like what happened there. So, but with it being so unpredictable, we really needed to bleed that clock a little bit more, and I wish we had done that. And I would have loved to have had 2 receivers over 100 yards and a running back over 100 yards. That would have been pretty cool.
Well, they did have. They did have the wide receiver with 2. Yeah.
Yep, they did. And that was really fun to see. I mean, Marvin Mims, he basically took care of it all in one play almost. But Cortland Sutton, he was his usual efficient self, especially, again, 3rd down, the money down. But we've done this whole podcast, and we have not talked about the play that ultimately sealed the game, and that was Jaquan McMillan's pick. I mean, Jameis Winston committed one of the cardinal sins of quarterback play. They're on the far hash. He's trying to throw an out-breaking route to his tight end on the left side of the field. He puts it on the wrong shoulder, and Troy Aikman said it on the broadcast. If you put a ball on the wrong shoulder against man coverage, bad things happen. And Jaquan made an incredible play on that, leaped in front of it and intercepted it, found a way to get himself down inbounds, got up without being touched by the receiver, and was able to take it to the house to seal the game. I mean, an incredible play. I said it earlier in the show. Good teams make big plays in big moments, and that's what that was. That was a big play in a big moment to seal that game.
Yeah. Oh, my gosh. So, Gage, you were there. I don't know, and I think you were sitting on the opposite side of the field. Is that accurate?
I was up where we sat together.
Yeah.
That's where I was.
Okay. So he was heading in your direction then. What was that moment like? I mean, the place just must have been absolute bedlam.
I mean, at first, I didn't realize that he had picked it until the crowd started going nuts. Like, I thought that it was just a PBU, or even the receiver had caught it because it was such a physical play at first. But then I see Jaquan get up, and I realized that he picked it. And, I mean, at that point, the whole stadium just went absolutely insane. We were all just screaming, and all of us were high-fiving each other around us like, that's when you just knew that we had it. I mean, the Browns were driving downfield. Denver only had one timeout left. It was kind of looking grim there for the Broncos at that point.
Mm-hmm.
But Jameis Winston commits one of the cardinal sins of quarterback play, and ultimately that puts the Broncos in position to win the game. And, yeah, the stadium was just electric.
So you had the Benito touchdown, you had McMillan touchdown, and you had the Mims touchdown. Have you ever been to a game or watched a game that had three major plays or that many major plays that blew the roof off each time?
Honestly, no. Like I've said it already, this was the most electric game that I've ever been to. I've never experienced a football game like that. And honestly, it's the full Jameis Winston experience. You've got to have a quarterback like Jameis Winston on the opposing sideline in order to truly experience a football game like that. So, yeah, that was definitely a first for me.
Jeff Bryan asked, did the upper bowl shake?
Oh, yeah, it definitely shook. Like the whole place shook.
Well, what do they call it? The Rocky Mountain Thunder or whatever it is. Yeah. By the way, I saw just real quick. I saw this guy. I don't. His name's blurred out over on the screen. He says that we need a new center. Wattenberg ain't it. Well, by the way, Mundungus, he didn't have a single sack, hit, hurry, allowed, or pressure in the single game, and also he graded out as the best pass blocking offensive lineman in the entire game last night. So just letting you know.
And he completely washed out one Shelby Harris for the entire game.
Yeah. But so now going forward with this rest of the season, I'll go to you, Glenn, because we did joke a little bit about it earlier. How likely are we going to see your prediction, actually ring true? Are they going to actually finish the job and get your prediction, or we going to maybe see at most, or at least I should say 10 wins?
So I think we're going to have at least 10. And, as we've been lamenting the Chiefs in these like lucky breaks, these mystery penalties, these, that's not a false start. It was an illegal shift. So it's a fumble. The more you think about it, it's like, they're destined to win the division. So let's let them run away with it a little bit more. I don't want them to get I'd like to get for us to have them be the second seed, and I'll get to the point in a second. But that could benefit us in week 18, where if they've solidified their spot, we could be playing a team that's got some backup QBs, backup tight ends, maybe not as electric of a matchup. So to answer your question, I think that there's a real possibility that we could win these next 4 games. We have the Colts at home. We're now flexed to the Thursday night game at LA, and the Chargers are so unpredictable. I mean, they should have lost to the Falcons the other day. Kirk Cousins turned into Drew Lock right before our very eyes. If we can keep Joe Burrow or at least like stay in line with him in terms of scoring, the Cincinnati Bengals defense is non-existent. They've been terrible. And then we got the Chiefs, man. 12-5 would be absolutely remarkable. Do I think it's really going to happen? Probably not, but that would be but it is feasible.
Gage?
Yeah, and double-digit wins at this point seems more than realistic. Like at this point, that would be the expectation. If the Broncos only win one more football game in this last 3, then honestly, they don't deserve to go to the playoffs. They didn't take care of business. They choked. So basically, the Broncos, in order to get into the playoffs, what has to happen is they need to take care of business coming out of the bye week against Indianapolis. Then they need Miami to lose one time, and they need to win one more time. If they do that, then they have punched their ticket to the NFL playoffs.
Yeah.
So Denver has got to be able to find a way to get the job done against Indianapolis And then you look at that Chargers game on Thursday Night Football, where the Broncos have not been swept by the Chargers since 2010. In week 6, the Broncos walked into a trap game against the Chargers. They were not prepared for what was coming against that team. They're going to be a lot more prepared for it now. And like you guys said, the Chargers have had some very suspect games these past few weeks. The Ravens game, yes, it's the Ravens, but still, they really did not play their best football in that game. And then this Falcons game where, honestly, the only team that can out-Charger the Chargers is the Atlanta Falcons. I mean, yeah, so the Chargers are vulnerable. They're beatable. And if the Broncos are going to be taken serious, then they should be able to beat this Chargers team second time around. If you get the win against Indy and you get the win against the Chargers, and if Miami loses, hell, you could already have a playoff spot locked up with 2 weeks to go, man.
Yeah.
That's insane to even think about. You look at the Bengals game, obviously you've got Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins. Anytime you've got those guys, you're always going to have a chance. It's a shame that the Bengals have really wasted an MVP caliber season from Joe Burrow, but their defense is freaking awful. They are so bad. Yeah. Denver should be able to win that game. And then, like we were talking about, we get to that Kansas City game and probably could be backup bowl if the Broncos have taken care of their business and the Chiefs have taken care of their business. We literally could see backups all across the board in that game. So there's a realistic opportunity here for the Broncos to really take care of business here.
Yeah, they do control their own destiny. And thanks for hopping in, David. You great comments tonight on the stream. So like I think that like again like maybe it's a bit crazy, but like the way that this is unfolded and the driver's seat that the Broncos are in, and you know they have a bye week, you know, I feel like depending on playoff predictors and and whatnot, like in terms of this upcoming week, I would venture to guess that given with how far ahead the Broncos are to specifically the Indianapolis Colts, like I feel like there's a real chance. I don't know about a very real chance, but there could be a chance that maybe the Broncos actually clinch well before, you mentioned 2 weeks before, Gage. There could be a possibility they even have clinched a playoff spot and the Chargers even before that Thursday night game, because I think I think that there's like a specifically that I can recall, this is one of the first times that I can think of where it's not as chaotic going into the final stretch of the season, where it seems like truly you're very comfortable in saying all 7 teams are set in the AFC. And, looking strictly at the playoff picture, it's really nothing. It's really all but that NFC.
Yep. And, you look at the Colts right now, they're probably Denver's biggest threat. And Anthony Richardson's played some good football these last few weeks, but I'm sitting here waiting for him to turn back into a pumpkin. Like, it's due. It's got to happen at some point. And it really should happen against this Broncos defense with the way that they can play, especially if Riley Moss is back. I feel like the Colts should really be not in contention after that game, honestly. So after that, you've got to think about the Miami Dolphins, and you just need one loss from them, and you're golden. So, yeah, man, the Broncos might even have their business taken care of before we go into that Chargers game if they play their cards right.
Yeah.
And if he turns into a pumpkin, he'll be a tap-o'-lantern. But anyway, the Patriots did not do us any favors the other day, allowing that win to happen. I really was counting on the Pats, and I was really counting on the Falcons to take care of business and give us a hand in those 2 instances. Not only that, as I was really hoping the Falcons could get a win to advance Justin a little bit closer to his first playoff spot. I mean, look at he leaves, and now the team's on the verge of like we have a 76% chance of making the playoffs at this point. Yeah, it's crazy.
But I was gonna say, and interestingly enough, now we didn't get a chance to talk about the that position. But interestingly enough, there might be a little bit of a safety conundrum, for this team. So Justin, if you're listening, we would definitely welcome you back with open arms. Now that we got a quarterback and it certainly seems like a defense that is on the rise. So we certainly could welcome you back with open arms.
Yeah, Cam would pick you up at the airport.
Yeah, so. Exactly.
Take you down to Castle Rock.
Yeah. We would be remiss also if we did get a chance to talk about the other biggest news that wasn't just Monday but Tuesday. The Hall of Fame once again was on their same BS and decided to pick Mike Holmgren as the coach honoree for the NFL Hall of Fame, and basically making it so that Mike Shanahan has to wait one more year. And I think it was Eclipse who posted it today that said, if all goes according to plan, in the sense of Bill Belichick not wanting a job, that he is up for the NFL Hall of Fame, I think is what he said. And so and you'd venture to guess that Bill Belichick will get in, that means that it's going to be a pretty long time before Shanahan gets in.
Stupid.
Yeah, it makes no sense. And Ken Booker even said that that Holmgren was the guy who was coaching the team in Super Bowl 32 that Mike Shanahan beat, and then he won the second. But when you think about Shanahan, it's not just what happened when he was coaching; it's the impact that he continues to have on this league. Not just for his son, but all over the place. I mean, it's just, I don't understand it. I know people are upset that Robert Kraft still hasn't made it yet, but I think Shanahan at this point, for somebody who's a non-player, makes absolutely, I think he's the biggest omission at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, seeing what Shanahan's impact has been in the NFL to this day, this has got to be some personal vendetta, and that's why I think that there needs to be a complete shift in how we vote for the Hall of Fame. Also, how Pro Bowl, All Pro, all that stuff is voted for. I think it's just all popularity contests now, because Mike Shanahan should have been in the Hall of Fame his first year out of coaching, quite frankly. He had that big of an impact on this league, and I feel like people are maybe accounting for what happened with his time during the Washington franchise, and they're holding that against him a little bit too much. Maybe that's the only thing I can think of that would hold Mike Shanahan back from being a Hall of Famer, because you name another two-time Super Bowl champion head coach who had the impact on the NFL like Mike Shanahan has, that hasn't gone into the Hall of Fame. I'll wait.
Yeah, it's wild. And you could even make the case that the Shanahan system had been instituted the moment he was coaching, right? Because Gary Kubiak was his assistant. So it was already the process and, the formulation of the Shanahan type of style was starting to basically percolate from that moment, with Gary Kubiak. And then even look at Gary Kubiak, right? A lot of his kids are very prominent and very successful, coordinators or assistant coaches, or, it's they're really good coaches in their own right that are from the Shanahan system. Then you go obviously to, his brother, to the McVay, style, to Mike McDaniel, regardless of the fact that he's may or may not be on the hot seat. He's still a really good coordinator. He's a really good offensive coordinator. So there is just a lot, that I think is just so much in favor of Shanahan that it's so I don't know if it's a certain vendetta, but the way that it's just unfolding year after year, it certainly seems like that is a very real possibility, that it seems like it might be a vendetta.
In terms of the senior committee announcements that we did get today, I was really excited that Sterling Sharp is finally gonna on the doorstep to the Hall of Fame. I mean, this was a guy that was so dominating in the 7 years that he played. You know, even Shannon Sharp had, in his Hall of Fame speech, you know, did this incredible tribute to his brother, saying like, you know, the best football player in their house is not in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
And so I think that one's great. There's a controversial one, and I was unfamiliar with this player, but Jim Tyrer, an offensive tackle for the Kansas City Chiefs. You know, he apparently was very dominating as a player, but he murdered his wife and then took his own life in 1980. So it's like, it's a very, you know, and they're saying that it's one of the first cases that they've attributed to CTE, but it's a very, very weird, it's a weird choice to for an honor like that when you have a lot of different options. I would say that was very, very strange to me.
Yeah. So I don't know. I'm hoping. I am certainly hoping that this is the end soon, and that Shanahan can, you know, get in at some point. But yeah, I'm
just looking at Ken's last comment. I don't know if you pulled that up.
Well, because I was gonna say, if not, I might be. We or all of us might actually be taking some shots of whiskey.
Oh my goodness.
Moose River Hummer mentions totally with Gage on what is holding Mike Shanahan out of the Hall of Fame. While with Washington, the injury, the RG3 capped off with, you know, the animosity towards Shanahan. I mean, you know, the RG3 era was like, I mean, look, Kirk Cousins is still in the league, right? And like, who's the one quarterback? He was criticized for it, right? Like, he was criticized for it. Like he took RG3, right, with his top pick, and then in the third round, and funny enough, that was the exact same draft class that we took Brock Lobster, by the way. But like, you know, they draft Kirk Cousins in that exact same draft, you know, got, you know, hate all across the board. And look who became the face of the franchise for Washington for a bit.
Yep.
Right.
So, you know, with me missing the beginning of the show, what did you guys what were your comments about Josh Reynolds, if you don't mind?
We didn't touch on it all that much. So we can definitely talk a little bit about it more in the sense that we did say that he was released, obviously, but yeah, it's unfortunate. I mean, like I think I said it's bittersweet because you always want moves to work out. And I would definitely say that I was a bit taken back by it. Mm-hmm. I didn't necessarily suspect, and I'm sure maybe a lot of us didn't expect a release to happen. And I know there are probably some people that are probably thinking, well, the Marvin Mims and, you know, the expansion of his role might necessarily be, you know, why Josh Reynolds was released. And actually it was, you know, Devon Bailey. I think Gage actually touched a little bit on that briefly in the show. And it was just like, so it's unfortunate. And even though it's not necessarily a great deal of money that they're saving, it's still money for next year that they're saving, because he did sign that 2-year deal.
Yeah. The best part about that deal was that it was unguaranteed.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was huge. That was definitely huge. But no, you're good. You're good. I cut you off. What were you? Did you have anything else?
No, that was really my point, is that you know, I personally thought that they were going to put him on IR for the rest of the season because things were cooking right now. And it was like, who was going to be taking a seat? So I didn't expect the full release to happen. But, you know, then when you read that only $4.31 million was guaranteed of the 2-year deal, and it's already going to be paid off this year. So no harm, no foul. Truly is.
Yeah.
Yep. And with Devon Bailey, he's emerged into that Z receiver role for the Broncos. And Sean Payton has been gassing up Devon Bailey really ever since the draft. And he's had some private conversations where he's told media members, hey, I got this 7th round rookie here who's going to be the steal of the draft. And he said that same thing about Marcus Colston. And obviously, Bo Nix has been the steal of the draft for the Broncos, but Devon Vele is a very clear second candidate for that. And he has emerged into that role that just ultimately made Josh Reynolds expendable. And it's very unfortunate the way things went down, from the injury to obviously the incident that Reynolds got involved in there. But I wish him nothing but the best moving forward. And I think the most logical landing spot for Josh Reynolds is to go back to Detroit. Like, it just feels like that's going to happen. Be able to basically replace Allen Robinson on the active roster and go try to win a ring and take care of some unfinished business there in Detroit.
Can we briefly touch on that? So Jeff Bryan mentions at least, the team did also right and, allowing him to sign, possibly with a new team. Well, Miami didn't exactly do that with Shaq. I think a lot of us, the moment that, Shaquille Barrett, by the way, when he was reinstated by the NFL and, ready to come back, I think all of us just kind of expected, since he was signed for a 1-year deal, that the team would do right by him, and didn't happen. They decided actually to basically what's literally hold him hostage. And shut him down for the entire season. Because to Brian's point, he would have been perfect for the season that they're on. You add him to that mix as far as a vet defensive pass rusher presence. Yeah, that would have been perfect.
I did see a Benjamin Albright tweet that said that the Eagles had actually talked to Shaq's camp, and maybe that was the team that sort of initiated the conversations about bringing him out of retirement. I don't remember if Shaq worked with Fangio when he was here in Denver. I think they did for 1 year. I think it was 20. No, it wasn't. It wasn't. No. But either way, the Eagles had contacted Shaq's camp, and apparently that was the team that was really interested in him. And that's what really rubs me the wrong way about Miami, is like, they don't play the Eagles this year, and the Eagles aren't even in your conference. Like, why wouldn't you let him go to the Eagles? I can understand not letting him go to the Buffalo Bills because they're your biggest threat in your division, but the Philadelphia Eagles aren't even in your conference. I don't get it.
Unless he didn't want him to be a Bronco, because the Broncos and Dolphins at that point in time were vying for a playoff spot. But still,
it's weird. I mean, it's not a practice that's going to help them get players in the future.
Yeah. By the way, one thing I since we are going to be, entering this bye week, one of the things I feel is probably good is also like looking back at everything that happened, this year, and looking forward into the bye week. I venture to guess that all three of us, I'm not going to say all four of us because one is missing. But and by the way, to anybody that is, just tuning in, Mike is not here because we put him in timeout because he disrespected Travis Hunter on the timeline. He mentioned about how he is like the third, best wide receiver on the team. So he disrespected, Travis Hunter. So that's the reason why he is not with us tonight. But looking back at the, it's bad when a fellow Cornhusker is praising Travis Hunter, or I should say ACU Buffalo, by the way. But looking back at overall this season, going into the bye week, I think all four of us can pretty much agree this has been a raging success so far this year. What has been the most impressive aspect going into this bye week? I think we all know that answer, but what has been the most impressive part now going into the bye week and with where this team is headed? And what do you think changes, going forward with, only about 4 or 5 games remaining?
So I would say the most impressive thing, obviously the low-hanging fruit there, is Bo Nix. So I'm trying to pick something that's not the low-hanging fruit. I would say obviously the way that the defensive line has been playing, both on the edge as well as the interior defensive line. They missed Zach Allen last week, but they got him back this week, and obviously the defensive line returned to their same dominant self. So that for me has been the most impressive thing. But as far as something that might change heading into the bye week, and we've already seen this change over the last couple of weeks, but I think Jaleel McLaughlin has pretty much earned the RB1 role for this team. And I think at this point, we want to start increasing his workload as we get into this home stretch of the season. He's got the fresh legs right now. He's got the juice. He's got the explosiveness. Maybe work in a little bit more Audric Estime as well. But Javonte Williams, he's basically been demoted to third down, pass protection, and occasional pass catching running back. That's it. So that's the big
JP Ryan
change
role
that started. Yes, he's basically the new Samaj P. Ryan.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, I think one of the things that bears noting is that how the season started. You know, we had expectations that we would win at least the first two and maybe go into Tampa and struggle against them before a game against the Jets in the first 4 games of the season. And to drop those first two, the fan base, you know, I think it's safe to say, here we go again. You know, we are fucked. You know, it's you know, you had such hope, and then in how things just started churning and starting to go in our direction. But what was crazy about that is if you look at how the team played in Tampa, and forget about the Jets game because that was just an odd one with the weather. But how they played in Tampa is not the same team as you're seeing now. You know, we put it together that day and managed to beat a team that was suspected to be one of the top teams in the NFC. But this team has grown. Like I mean, you're just seeing it every week. There's a different, you know, there's a different contributor. There's a different play being run. There's just different things happening that, you know, it didn't seem likely at the beginning of the year. And I think that's the thing that's most exciting for me is like, what's next? You know, like we've put it together. You know, last night could have gone either way, but it didn't. You know, there's some spectacular, crazy plays happened, and those are the types of breaks that when a team is putting it together, those are the types of breaks that seem to fall their way, and we haven't seen that in recent years. So I like how this team has worked together to erase a terrible start to the season and just get to a point where, like I said, 76% chance of the playoffs at this point, and you know there's a good chance we're either the 5 or 6 seed at the, you know, moving forward, depending on how Baltimore or the Chargers go.
Yeah, we're at least the 7th seed. Like that's just the thing that is like just crazy. So obviously we haven't clinched anything yet, but we are at least the 7th seed. I think if I was to use one word to sum up the season, and kind of summarize, you know, with where we are, I think it's growth. This team has shown growth all across the board. And obviously, I'm not going to mention the low-hanging fruit because obviously we all know that this season had really been all predicated upon had the Broncos found their guy. I don't think we would have necessarily, you know, expected to have found their guy that quickly or midway point into the season. We certainly wanted it to be true, and it came to be true. But I think that the growth for me is just as a team. And as much as we talk about Bo Nix really molding and becoming that guy, I think is where we also have a tendency to kind of forget. And I know we had the conversation, you know, in the show today and everything, but like, and even over the course of a handful of weeks, but just given the growth, a lot of narratives also feel like they've been shifted or the door is shut. And you know, and a lot of that is like, you know, look, you know, to what we talked about, you know, at the beginning part of the season or at the beginning part of this episode, we were slamming Courtland Sutton, right? Courtland Sutton has just shafted and, you know, shut the door on every single narrative that's been about him, possibly, maybe as a wide receiver one. Do we all think he is? I don't think so, but the way he certainly played this year has been at a wide receiver one level statistically, and so he shut up a lot of narratives there. But like the one where it really rings true is the Nick Bonito thing. I mean, like going into the season, is when we talk about growth, like we were questioning, is there even an alpha, on this football team? And, what is the additions of this, these guys on this defensive line, guys like Zach Allen and John Franklin Myers, Malcolm Roach, is DJ Jones going to come back? Well, I think that where we actually are seeing this unfold is that the pieces that they added to this defensive front, guys like Malcolm Roach and John Franklin Myers, have actually significantly helped out the performance of guys like a Jonathan Cooper and a Nick Bonito, to where they could possibly become those alphas and groom into being those dominant Batman type edge rushers. So I think that for me, like, if I was to just label one thing in growth, it's just like Nick Bonito has just shut up everything. For as much as we talk about Bo Nix and everything, like it is unbelievable what he has done this year.
Yeah.
What's been cool too is, from a personnel standpoint, is that the wheels are still turning. Like Pat Surtain gets extended.
Mm-hmm.
Jonathan Cooper gets extended. Like, so now these guys are seeing that the team is willing and ready to take care of you when the time comes. Quinn Miners gets his contract, right? So it's like, these were things that when Elway was in charge, and he's not in charge, but anyway, when he was in charge, they didn't value these guys and keep them. Now they're extending them during the season as they're having success. Nick Bonito is going to make bank. Jaquan McMillan, I can't even imagine what that contract's going to look like. This is so exciting. Like, there's a core there that believes, and they believe in each other. It's pretty cool.
David Yunkin just wrapped or had to finish up the night, but he dropped in a comment. And what you talked about, I thought was, at least appropriate to talk about heading into the bye week, and that is, where do we go from here? Because the Broncos have done a really good job of rewarding players, and I think that when we talk about narratives, one narrative in particular, obviously, and we don't need to talk about it, that it clearly has been shut also this year, has been George Paton. And his ability to draft. That's like probably one of the most under the radar narratives that I feel like has been massively shut, is that George Paton is as a drafter, given obviously, Jonathan Cooper and everything and extensions and so on and so forth. Do you see a very likely scenario where they extend some of those players, like a Garrett Bowles, maybe even a Courtland Sutton, or frankly, and this is a conversation that I even mentioned on Mainly, I think it was like 2 weeks ago before I got, sick. Do you actually go the way things are going and shaping, that you actually franchise tag Bowles and then attach an extension onto, Garrett Bowles, it's almost as a 4-year deal? So like, where do you guys feel like contract extensions are headed?
I don't necessarily know if you'd franchise tag him. Maybe if you don't get something done, you'd slap like a second round tender on him. But honestly, I think that Garrett Bowles is going to be one of the easiest ones to get done. He wants to stay here. He wants to be a Bronco for life. He's made that clear on multiple occasions. The Broncos will probably offer him a deal that's fair for both himself as well as the team. And given Garrett Bowles' history, he will take a team-friendly deal. I think that he wants to see through what this team is building. Next year really is that year where you can raise the bar of your expectations from playoff team to possible Super Bowl team. And Garrett Bowles has been here through all of this shit. He wants to be here when this team wins a championship, and he wants to enjoy the fruits of his labor. So I think that's going to be the easiest one to get done. Courtland Sutton, I honestly think it might be a similar thing. Players are going to take a discount because Bo Nix is a guy that they're going to want to play with.
Jonathan Cooper's a prime example.
Franchise quarterback. What?
Cooper's a prime example midseason.
Yes, absolutely. And I just feel like, the Broncos are definitely going to prioritize some of these extensions, and they've got the money to give, and these players, I think, are going to want to be here, especially after seeing the culture change that has taken place in this building.
And it's funny that we're talking about like team-friendly contracts and discounts and such, and they're probably going to be between $15 and $20 million a year, you know. But Bowles is the longest tenured player on the team at this point. I mean, so and he's never made the playoffs either. So, you know, you referenced George Payton a minute ago, Cam. Getting Franklin Myers during that draft for essentially nothing, and then signing him to a 3-year deal. So we're locking these pieces in place. You know, hearing people saying, you know, let's get rid of DJ Moore and save $10 million. He kept him. Great move. Like you just, and these guys are incredible at these 7th round picks. I mean, Vele, Cooper, like they're connecting on these, and you know, it's not only going to be a team that is going to draft well because we have our draft capital back, but it's going to be a destination location. Not only is the team on the rise, but a new facility or an updated facility is being built. Richest owners in sports, a coach that people have a lot of respect for in terms of his play calling. I think a lot of the pieces are falling into place for the Broncos to be able to really pick and choose who they want to be on the team and not just who wants to come here for a paycheck.
You know, it's really interesting because, and I really hadn't made this point before, but like when we talk about ownership and we talk specifically from the, you know, the ownership side of things, and you know, we've mentioned about the worth of, you know, Rob Walton and just the Waltons in general, but like, how humble, you know, is it really? I mean, like, obviously people give a lot of grief to Walmart in general, but like, but how humble is it to have an ownership group basically give the keys, you know, and basically to the head coach and just say, or even the staff, and just say, tell us what you want, you know, and we'll make sure that we can meet those needs and everything to ensure that this is the best football product on the field. Like, so it's just like, just having that, I think, should alleviate a lot of stress for basically everybody in that building. So when we do hand out extensions going forward, like it matters, such a huge deal for nearly every single person in that room, because you know it's going to feel like you're being covered one way or another.
You know, even to the point, Cam, where it's like, oh, guess what, guys? We're replacing the field. We didn't like what, you know, we've had reports that it's not up to snuff, and we want your safety to be number one. So we're spending $500,000, and over the next couple of weeks, this you're going to have a brand new playing surface. These are things that are not happening in other places. You know, you're hearing about some of these stadiums, you know, like the Meadowlands, for example, MetLife, and guys are getting hurt there all the time. You know, these owners do care about I mean, it's an investment. They do care about their investment, but they do care about this team. And the fact that the Penners lived in Colorado prior to buying the team means something. You know, it's real, guys. It's real.
Yeah, it is. Jeff Bryant asks, you know, are there any Saints players, you know, that possibly could be a play? Well, it's probably, you know, worth noting, and I think all, you know, 4 of us mentioned it at one point. Alvin Kamara was that piece that we thought was probably the best trade piece, and maybe he's still kind of a trade piece. They might have to do some, you know, financial reconstruction, you know, obviously given his contract extension. But, you know, and Taysom Hill obviously was going to be one player. I'm probably steering clear from him, given all of the injury history now, and unfortunately his ACL injury, and we wish him all the best.
I don't know, man. I mean, he had the ACL and he's had some other injuries, but if he can bounce back from that and the Saints move on, the Broncos just seem like the most logical team to go scoop him up.
But are there any Saints players, you know, that kind of pique your interest?
I mean, there's one, but he's not exactly tied to Peyton, and that's Tyrann Mathieu. I would definitely be at least interested in maybe entertaining Tyrann Mathieu. Demario Davis, maybe, but not really. The Saints they've got an aging roster, and the
Cam
Broncos
Jordan.
are going with more of a youth movement right now.
Yeah.
Mhm.
You know, really the only one that comes to mind is Juwan Johnson. You know, as far as a tight end weapon. So yeah, but even then, you know, I know that I posed this in the chat, our 5280 chat, but you know, I'm all for having little Jordan Humphrey just gain just a little bit of weight and being kind of a receiving, you know, blocking threat, you know, tight end, and doing kind of what Peyton wanted to do with Juwan Johnson, and you know, convert him to be a tight end after he was a wide receiver. So I don't know, maybe you kind of see that. So,
And I
but
know we've gone long, but question for you on that, because
yeah,
Gage and I are both on board with the little Jordan Humphrey tight end experience, because I don't think that could go south at all. So he's listed at 6'4", 225. Realistically, how much weight would you think he needs to add in order to effectively play that position?
15 to 20 pounds, I'd say.
yeah,
Okay, that's not much.
Yeah, get up to like 240, 245.
yeah.
Okay.
And obviously it would depend on like his weight, you know, like the muscle, you know, like obviously the overall muscle distribution. And because I mean, you can obviously, as we found out with Greg Dulcich, you could possibly be that size. You just can't block for, you know, crap. So,
Well, he can block, though. That's the thing. We already know
yeah.
Humphrey can block.
So we
Mhm.
definitely know that you know, Humphrey can block for sure. So I think it's certainly doable. The other question, you know, would be, is he willing, you know, to make the change? Obviously, right? Like, is he willing to, you know, go through and make the position change and, you know, that sort of thing. So I'm not saying, you know, certainly it would, you know, obviously it's going to happen, because I think that the playmaker room in general is going to probably go through some big, massive, you know, patchwork over the course of, you know, a handful of years, because we all know, for as much as this has been a raging success, this is going to be the worst team Bo Nix
Mhm.
fields, and even Sean Payton fields with his current quarterback. So this is going to be the worst team that gets field, you know, going forward. By the way, just briefly, one last question for me would be: has the draft needs changed just a little bit?
Maybe if you do extend Garrett Bowles, I mean, offensive tackle has kind of been a topic of conversation for draft needs. I still think tight end is probably your number one need, at least offensively. You need a dominant tight end. And there are a couple of guys such as Colston Loveland out of Michigan that I'm eyeballing that just make me go
Mhm.
like, yeah, that would be a difference maker as a potential addition in the first round. So yeah, you know, I'm definitely eyeballing the tight end position. So I don't think it's changed in that regard. But if you extend Garrett Bowles, then offensive tackle might not be a need for you, at least early on in the draft in the first round. Maybe you draft a long-term development option in the third round and sit him behind Bowles for a couple of years, and then you play him in year 3. The Broncos kind of did that with Luke Wattenberg, where they drafted him in 2022. He developed for 2 years behind Lloyd Cushenberry and briefly Graham Glasgow, and then they turned him loose in year 3, and he emerged as your starter.
Yeah. Has it changed for you, Glenn, in terms of some
Uh,
of the?
I mean, tight end is so glaring. You know,
Yeah.
it's this revolving door. And you reference, like, would little Jordan be willing to make the change?
Right.
You know, I think his salary right now is under 2 million. I think it's like I think it might even be 1 million.
Right.
So it's not where he's in a position as a wide receiver that, you know, these guys all want to be classified as a wide receiver,
Correct.
so that when they so when they get slotted, it's at a higher amount. You know, I think you throw a few extra bucks at him to do the tight end, because it's really not, he's not at that level where being
Right.
classified as a full-time tight end, it's going to affect him, and you know, negatively, and in getting that huge contract, because he's not there yet. But I would love to see him get an opportunity. But like Gage mentioned, you know, and Penn State has a top tight
Mm.
end. I don't know if the Broncos would go in the first round with that, but the Raiders showed that like taking a tight end in the first round can work out for you.
Yeah.
I mean, he's already considered widely to be the best tight end in the NFL right now. I'm talking about Brock Bowers. And running back, I think you gotta pick one up. It is supposed to be a heavy running back draft, but I think second or third round, you got to get somebody that's got some talent, because right now it seems like every show we're talking about somebody on our team earning the RB1. I mean, just a couple weeks ago, we thought Estime was going to be the guy, and he's barely seeing the field now. I think one thing that we all can agree on is that Javonte Williams is he won't be a Bronco after this season ends. So those are the two positions that really stand out to me the most.
I was gonna say running back. I think it was kudos to Joey who had this out, but and this is something we mentioned before, but Sean Payton and George Payton, they do put in terms of a priority for the running back position. So I mean I agree the tight end position is certainly right up there as far as needs, but running back feels like one of those needs that maybe the Broncos kind of dabble a little bit, maybe in the trade market and maybe pull a trade. I mean, frankly, at this particular point, and you already currently made a trade with this team, but I wouldn't be the least bit upset, given how tumultuous this has been, with that organization. But I would call about Breece Hall. I would ask the Jets, what would you feel about maybe giving us Breece Hall? We'll give you one of our 6th round picks. Might be a little bit higher than that, but hey,
I'd do a 4th.
But yeah, so I think that I'm really curious to see how the Broncos could kind of like attack that room, because I mean, if they wanted to go with this whole youth movement too, that draft class specifically has got like nothing but needs that they need, right? If you will, wide receiver, maybe safety, tight end, running back. So they definitely, have some needs there. And I think that given the Garrett Bowles thing, it should actually force them to sign the extension, because the offensive tackle class is pretty weak. And the left tackle class in free agency is really dang weak.
Yeah. Would you do like Breece Hall and a 6th round pick for a 4th?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, no, heartbeat. Heartbeat.
So and who knows? Obviously,
would the Jets do that though?
That's the question,
right? Especially consider the fact the Broncos are the ones that created their whole circus, if you will, that was this season, if you will. So who knows? They might say no now.
Yeah.
I know the Broncos have had the Jets number so much. I fully expected Rob Walton to be named the ambassador to the UK.
But no, yeah, and one team actually I would, and especially given the season that they've been having, I actually would not be surprised if the Broncos also called, would be San Francisco.
George Kittle.
Yeah, just kind of.
I think he's talking about.
Huh?
You're talking about C-Mac or Kittle?
No, I'm talking about. Although I would love Christian McCaffrey, I think everybody would. But no, George Kittle, maybe a Juwan Jennings. I think he's about like, what is it, a 2-year contract or something? I think it is that he only signed for the 49ers. Obviously there's Deebo Samuel, but I think with the emergence of Marvin Mims, that's kind of like a non-equation at this point. That you don't really need Deebo probably at that point, but yeah, I wouldn't be the least bit surprised if you want to call the 49ers there. And we know that they've done deals before in the past, the Broncos and Niners.
Yep.
So, well, gents.
Right, look, I'm looking at the time, and it's like this is like a mainly Broncos type episode.
That's right.
An hour and 45 minutes. We should wrap it up.
That was a great show.
It was. Thank you guys so much for hopping in. Make sure you obviously follow us over on the Facebook page. It is the MHRT Network. Follow Glenn and all of those technical difficulties. at Glenn Hauser. Although I don't think there's, I would venture to guess there's, as many technical glitches, over there on X and that platform. But yeah, make sure you go follow us. And obviously, Gage and the show that he does with Bronco Syndicate, phenomenal show. So subscribe to his channel. Follow him on X at Gage Madrid NFL. Follow myself at Cameron Parker PO as well. Mainly Broncos is the show handle for that. And follow him on Dungas Creepy. At Broncos Wizard.
No, don't follow him.
Make sure you follow him on X. Thank you guys so much again for getting a chance to watch this episode of the 5280. It feels good to be back. And next week, it is bye week. It is we will be recapping the bye week of the NFL season for the Denver Broncos. So I'm sure the Broncos will win their bye week. So thanks again, and we will be back for another episode of 5280.
Fast lane when I pass in the street, bag of money in the passenger seat. Simcoe's been asking for me on the road from the west to the east. Way up, I might never come down, cause the coast racking up the flame out. So high, I might never come down, so what, this is my lifestyle.